How will we learn? What will we learn? Who will we be? What difference will we make? You know, this is an odd assignment for an historian because we dwell in the past. We live in the past. We have no present lives, and we are not very good at all at predicting the future. My job is to look backwards. My job is to look backwards and to tell you what happened and who did it and why it happened and how it happened. Historians rarely speculate about the future. We do, however, recognize that there are some patterns from the past that we take forward with us into the future, and that we need to recognize them when we see them in the present. And so today I'll speculate out a little bit about what that will mean for us in the future. Yeah, so I guess I can talk about what we learned from the past to start. But then I'm going to leave it up to you and to my students for figuring out what that means in terms of our future. The arc of history tells us that change requires determination. It requires determination, it requires courage, it requires daring, because the process of change engenders conflict. The process of change engenders conflict. And we don't like conflict. We here at Williams are often conflict avoidant. We like calm. We like people to get along with each other. We don't like yelling. We like rationality. We want things to go smoothly. But the process of change not only engenders conflict, but it engenders resistance and backlash. Your friends might be mad at you. Your colleagues might get mad at you. The alumni might get mad at you. The trustees might not like this. And institutions of higher institutions in general and institutions of higher education then change only very slowly. We creep forward because we don't want to leave anybody behind. We creep forward because we want to see if anybody else is doing the same thing that we are doing. We creep forward or not. We might actually simply wait to find out if our peer institutions are doing it. Well, I don't know. Are they doing it at Conn College? Are they doing it at Swarthmore? Okay, then maybe we should take it up. What about Harvard? Harvard's doing it? Definitely we'll do it. Our politeness, our fear of pissing people off allows us to make only small adjustments. We tweak the language. Right? We tweak the language in a new proposal, just so everybody will get that something new is going to happen, but it doesn't look like it's too much. We just tweak the language. But the flashpoints of change in American history and in Williams history tell us that this doesn't really help us to accomplish much. And I think of Jack Sawyer here. Didn't know him, but I think I might have liked him. Surely, many among the alumni and the trustees and the students thought Jack Sawyer was absolutely irrational for doing some of the things he wanted to do, right? We're talking about the age of madmen, and he eliminates fraternities, right? The age of madmen. He takes an institution that's one of the most prominent men's colleges in the country and says, let's bring in women and go co-ed. He ended compulsory chapel attendance and compulsory class attendance, and for that I think I'll never forgive him. set up a winter study, and for that I'll never forgive him, invested in science and technology, emphasized non-Western studies, what we now call the EDI requirement, non-Western studies. He put students and non-tenured faculty on major committees. We're not sure about whether we forgive him for that. I can only say that because I have tenure. When I was non-tenured, I actually thought I belonged on committees, so. The resistance was fierce, and people were outraged. They were outraged. The alumni were indignant. The students were resentful. Everyone was sure that they were going to lose the characteristics of the college that they loved and knew so much. And in the end, you know, Griffin Hall did not fall down. Hopkins Hall did not fall down. We suffered very few losses and made enormous gains, such that we are reveling every year when the Forbes rankings come out and the US News and World Report rankings come out. And we enjoy working with our expanded programs. And we enjoy living and working on a college campus that continues to upbuild and thrive in a way that we know this place is going to be here for generations to come. What will we learn? We will learn that there will be students in the future, and they will look back at us for what we do now. I think Sawyer's genius was not in his vision. It was in his willingness to engage that conflict, to manage conflict. He was a man of his age, grew up in knowing the time of segregation, watching the civil rights movement, and that was considered absolutely irrational in its time, right? And now we celebrate it. Now we celebrate all the heroes and all the people who put their lives on the line. But then in 61, 62, 63, 64, 65, people thought what they were doing was absolutely crazy. The activists, though, most of them young people, were asking the question of America: how could America actually believe that separate was equal? It was so obvious to them and not so obvious to everyone else. The Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee was considered irrational for their willingness to engage violence. That was the intent. The idea of nonviolent direct action was intended to create a crisis, to create a reaction, like street theater. Like street theater, knowing that something would happen, it would be captured by this new media thing called television, it would go out on the wires of the world, and it would convince the world that something had to change. The Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, in particular, were absolutely insane. They went to Mississippi, to rural sharecroppers, the most dispossessed people in the United States, and got them to register to vote and to directly challenge the Democratic Party of white supremacy. And they knew that they would run into the fury of the law. Martin Luther King was considered irrational for allowing the students in Birmingham, in Project C, allowing the students in Birmingham to fight against segregation through a series of marches, knowing full well that the director of public safety there, Bull Connor, was going to pull out the hoses and the dogs. 37 students from Williams went to Birmingham that spring to help. 37 students to watch, to witness what happened. But this is what had to happen in order to change. It meant having to go to jail. And in response to that kind of horror, 250,000 people marched peacefully on Washington. We celebrate the 50th year of that march this year. 250,000 people proved that it was possible to march peacefully in response to the violence. Martin Luther King said that day, we remember him for the dream, but he said that we were here in this sacred place to demonstrate a terrible condition. And now we see him as an American icon. There's a monument to him. It doesn't include any of his anger, though. In his interview with CBS, Sawyer commented on the energy of the era, the sense of adventure that was making the campuses so healthy and so vital. He had no idea what was coming. He had no idea what was coming. Over the next couple of years, students moved out onto the campus to make their discontent known over race issues, over war issues. Some of you may remember the Hopkins Hall occupation. Disruption is not a pleasant task, they said. It was never such for Gandhi. It was never such for the late Martin Luther King. It certainly is not such for us. It required soul searching. It required us to confront the status quo. And for their part, whites too had to think about what the problem was. It was so disruptive that it made white students, faculty, and staff begin to think about the problem. And you know, this irrational act that they did, we look back now and we think of the things that they did that enhanced student life at the college. The ridiculous things they asked for. A black admissions counselor to facilitate the recruitment of black students. The expansion of financial aid strategies necessary to lend support to that objective. The ability of students to travel to other places so that they could meet students like themselves. To build and strengthen the Black Studies program, we now call it the Africana Studies program, to increase the number of black faculty, to facilitate collaboration among those faculty and those students. We do that now every day. We are not Williams unless we are doing diversity, right? 30 black students in 1968. Now we have 226. 3 black faculty in 1969. And now we have 15. It's not enough to fill a conference room yet, but hopefully we'll get there. What will we learn? We'll learn about conflict, I hope. There are some things I worry about, and I know I'm out of time, but I want to give some time to this. First-year students still find themselves sprinkled among the entries, representing their race to the rest of the entry. Salt and pepper, pepper and salt, they called it in '69. Has our quest for diversity, in this quest for diversity, have we actually flattened out multiculturalism and lost the rich differences among student groups? Are we working so hard to make everything equal that we forget about the special needs, for example, of women students? Have we grown our numbers of faculty of color so much that we no longer act affirmatively to recruit and retain those we hire? Are we compliant enough that a disabled student can actually access the campus? These are photos we'll never see again, or perhaps we will. Well, what will we learn? 50 years from now, some historian will stand here and tell us that our embrace of politeness and civility has caused us to shun discontent. We have traded disorder for calm. And we've lost our sense of adventure. In small clandestine groups, still students work on serving the world here and there. But I don't see us serving North Adams or Pittsfield or Lanesboro. What will we learn? 50 years from now, we will learn whether we have linked our goals with our courage. We will learn whether we have repressed our conflict to the point that we no longer move forward. We will have forgotten the fierce urgency of now that Martin Luther King pressed upon us. Will we lead in higher ed, or will we continue to wait for our peers? What will we learn? You know, I really don't know. Like I said, I'm an historian. I dwell in the past. But I can say that 50 years from now, some historian and our students and our alumni and our trustees and our faculty will look back and they will assess us. They will assess what we do now. They will assess whether we have encouraged, created, and engaged conflict. Because that's what daring change is really all about. Thank you.